The question is that the amendment be agreed to, and I call the honourable member for Hughes.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It's very pleasing to hear there the member for Port Adelaide actually expressing his concern about the high cost of electricity prices. I would think that is the first time, Deputy Speaker, in the 8 odd years that I have been here that I've actually heard him express concern about the cost of electricity. Normally he was there backing his mates in South Australia because perhaps his state Labor colleagues in South Australia who were kicked out of office a few short years ago, he should have been talking to them and talking about the price of electricity. Or perhaps, Deputy Speaker, he should have been concerned about when he was part of the Labor Party that brought in a carbon tax which affected the wholesale price of electricity. And let's just go through, Deputy Speaker, what has happened to the wholesale spot price of electricity in this nation. Back in those heady days before the carbon tax, the wholesale price of electricity was $30 a megawatt in New South Wales, $30 a megawatt in South Australia, $29 a megawatt in Queensland, and $27 a megawatt hour in Victoria. And then, Deputy Speaker, we had the Labor Party introduce the carbon tax, which put 50% plus on the wholesale price of electricity. Where was Labor's concern then, Deputy Speaker, that we hear at the dispatch box now about the cost of electricity? Absolutely silence from them. We were told how wonderful it was. They were more concerned about implementing that tax than they were about the cost and effect that it would have on Australian business and Australian households on electricity. And then, Deputy Speaker, thankfully, the Coalition removed that dreaded carbon tax and the wholesale price of electricity fell. In fact, in Victoria, Deputy Speaker, it fell back down to $35, and in South Australia, it fell back to $40. And then, Deputy Speaker, we saw, with the Labor Party cheering, coal-fired power stations in South Australia, the Northern Power Station, be blown up, taken offline and blown up because of Labor in South Australia's reckless renewable energy target. Exactly the same renewable energy target that the Labor Party took the election last year, Deputy Speaker. And what has happened to the wholesale price of electricity in South Australia since 2015? Well, Deputy Speaker, according to the data from the Australian Energy Market Operator, it has gone from $40 to the current year an average of $110. In 5 short years, Deputy Speaker, from $40 to $110 a megawatt hour after they blew up their coal-fired power station. And what happened in Victoria, Deputy Speaker, after they decided another brilliant Labor plan to chase Hazelwood out of town, to triple the coal royalties and to drive them out, Deputy Speaker? What happened to the wholesale price of electricity in Victoria? Well, in 2015, Deputy Speaker, it was $30 a megawatt hour. This year, Deputy Speaker, it is running at $110 a megawatt hour. More, not double, more than triple, almost 4 times has the wholesale price of electricity increased in Victoria. So we've learned our lessons as a nation, Deputy Speaker. This is what happens when you blow up your coal-fired power stations. Now, we have in New South Wales a coal-fired power station at Liddell that AGL has said they want to close down. And the amazing thing is, Deputy Speaker, they've been offered $500 million for it. They've been offered $500 million for that coal-fired power station because investors say, OK, it's old and it's run down. We want to come in and refurbish it and keep it running to supply electricity into the Australian grid. But AGL have said no. We don't want that $500,000 because it is worth more to them closed down than it is in the hands of a competitor. That is withdrawal of supply. That is anti-competitive conduct. And it should be prohibited under our nation's competition law. I've argued long and hard with the chairman of the ACCC, Rod Sims. And I've said to him, I believe that you have an arguable case under our existing competition law to at least do some jawboning to AGL and say that is anti-competitive conduct, and you'll use the provision of our competition laws against it. But he is of the opinion that our existing competition laws are not strong enough. Therefore, Deputy Speaker, that is why this legislation is so important. We cannot stand back and watch a company with a very substantial degree of market power in an industry that supplies an essential service like electricity to engage in anti-competitive conduct by closing down a coal-fired power station when there is an offer for $500 million on the table. And that is why divestiture laws, for the first time in this nation's history, are highly appropriate. And just quickly on divestiture, Deputy Speaker, I know there have been some rumblings on our side of the Parliament on this. However, a divestiture provision has been in America's antitrust laws for over 120 years. The home of free market capitalism, Deputy Speaker, has had divestiture powers not just in their energy sector, across the entire economy for 120 years. And a couple of important points that need to be made. The divestiture, Deputy Speaker, is not government control or government takeover. It is simply a demerger, forcing a company with excessive market power, acting in an anti-competitive way, to break themselves up into several competing entities so they compete head-on with each other. Because if one company owned Liddell coal-fired power station, Deputy Speaker, they would not close it down and knock back an offer for $500 million. It only makes sense because they can recoup that loss with higher wholesale prices in the market, like what we have evidence of happen in South Australia and Victoria. That is what this legislation is about. And the lesson from history, Deputy Speaker. Over 100 years ago, the Standard Oil Company was broken up, ordered to divest by the US federal courts. And what happened there, Deputy Speaker? They were forced to divest into 34 separate companies. So, for as a shareholder, for every share that you had in Standard Oil, you were given one share each in 34 new companies. And very quickly, Deputy Speaker, the sum of the parts was greater than the whole. So shareholders, our history tells us that shareholders do not lose when there is a divestiture order in place. I'll leave my comments there, Deputy Speaker. I know there are many of my colleagues that want to speak on this important legislation, and we want to get it passed through this House post-haste. I thank the House.
The question is that the amendments be agreed to, and I call the honourable member for Kingsford Smith.